When I was a kid, I excelled in school. I even took a trip to Ecuador at age 10 because I really cared about poverty. Today, I'm a music student here at DU. I love to ski, and I even volunteer once a week by sharing my music with a hospice service. Would you be surprised to hear, though, you'll have to excuse me, I've been losing my voice, and as I tell this story, you'll hear that I've undergone a lot of stress in my life, and my body is literally holding tension in my throat because of what I've gone through. So please excuse me, and I hope you can understand me. Would you be surprised to hear that there was a middle chapter of my life, and that it was a chapter that was marked by severe mental illness? What do you think of when you think of mental illness? Do you run away from it? Are you scared of it? Do you simply not know what to do? Well, let me tell you my story. It begins in 2005 when I was going to college in California. I took on way too much at school and I literally burnt out. I started to hear a voice in my head and to believe things related to my religion which were not based on reality. For example, one night in class, I suddenly got the idea that Jesus was coming back imminently. So I got up, left my backpack in the classroom, and drove for 5 hours to the mountains to escape God's wrath at the end of the world. I know it sounds crazy, and that's because it really was. I was staring at the sky the entire time, on literally some of the busiest interstates in America, in Southern California. I was being honked at by endless cars. I honestly should have died in a tragic car accident. This is what happens when mental illness descends upon someone. They start to live in their own inner world that's not at all like the real world. Now, obviously, my friends and family were really starting to worry about me. So the very next Monday morning, my loving parents came out to pick me up and take me home. You have to understand, though, I thought I was totally fine. This didn't go over so well with my father, though. You see, my dad's a trained psychotherapist. So, when I told him I didn't want to go home, he told me that the only other option was to go to a mental hospital. I don't know what you guys have heard about mental hospitals, but they're pretty scary. And in my opinion, they're as bad as prisons. My roommate told me that he was God and said he was going to kill me. Talk about not being able to sleep at night. And when I returned home from the hospital, the voice in my head turned into what I thought was my roommate, still talking to me and telling me how to live my life. Over the coming months, I would take pills, which would basically not work. Then one day in the fall of 2006, I got into a really bad car accident. The very next day, I lost my job. As it would anyone, I think. This shook me up considerably. And I began to regress yet again. This time I began to see things which were not real. I began to see a snake. I want you to imagine what this was like for me. For 1 minute, I want you to put yourself in my shoes. I saw a snake that was in front of my chest. This snake would coil up all day long and continually bite at my heart over and over and over again. I was screaming profanities at the snake, but I literally believed that the snake was Satan and that I was being attacked by the devil himself. It was torture. I also saw fire. One day I woke up and there was so much fire in my parents' house that I spent the entire day in the back corner of my parents' bathroom because it was the only place in the whole house without fire. I bet you're all wondering how I got better. Well, as I said, the pills really weren't working. So I began to take an injection every 2 weeks, which did work and did get me better. But you know what I think did the trick? I learned to love myself for the first time in my life when I got better. I am a perfectionist, and I tend to drive myself too hard, to push myself too hard. I think that's what got me in trouble. And when I learned the value of caring for my own self, nurturing myself, and at times putting myself first, if that meant an end result of caring for others, I think that's how I improved. There are still some ways in which my illness affects me to this day, though. As I said earlier, my voice is really raspy, and that's apparent. But another way that my illness is affecting me is the side effects of medications. You see, after taking antipsychotics for 3 years, I gained 100 pounds. I've since lost 50 of those pounds, but it's definitely one of the effects of treatment. If you think my life was hell, though, imagine what it was like for my family. You see, when my parents were there for me, no one was there for my parents. Everyone they had counted on previously, and who was always there for everything else, simply vanished when I got sick. And so I have a question for you today. When someone breaks their arm, we write all over their cast. But when someone has a mental problem, we run the other way. Why is that? I'm going to bust a myth for you guys now, and that's this. Violence is not common in mental illness. Let me repeat that. Violence is not common in mental illness. It's my personal opinion that it's about as common as in the general population, actually. I've compiled a list of people that we all know that have had struggled with mental illness enough to interfere with their lives. This list includes Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, Michelangelo, Beethoven, Leo Tolstoy, Ernest Hemingway. The list goes on. This looks like a list to me of people who have struggled or who have influenced our society more than anyone else. And yet it's also a list of people who have struggled with severe depression, at times becoming suicidal, who have struggled with bipolar disorder, who have struggled with schizophrenia and multiple personality disorders. Are you really afraid of these people? Are you really afraid of me? I'm not going to deny the fact, though, that there are times when people are tortured by the voices in their heads for years and years, and they eventually give in to their delusions and do things which are harmful to others. We all remember what happened last year in Tucson, Arizona, when Jared Loughner unfortunately killed himself, and several other people, severely wounding Representative Gabby Giffords. Was Jared receiving the love and support he needed? I believe he was receiving some, but I don't think he was getting enough. There is hope, though, even in this most dire of circumstances. And that is this. I noticed that after the tragedy, everybody was asking all over the country and the world, why did this happen? And what can we do to prevent it from happening in the future? This shows to me that there's hope, that people are willing to talk about mental illness, even if for no other reason than that they do not want these things to happen in our world any longer. Another way that mental illness affects our society all the time is homelessness. Studies show that about 40% of homeless people are also mentally ill. I don't have all the answers to homelessness in our society, but Obviously, these issues are interrelated. And if we help one, we will help the other. There are guys like me who just fall through the cracks. So, what is my message today? My message is that yes, we need to bring awareness to this issue. That yes, we need to stop the stigma in its tracks. That we need to pull it out from under the carpet because we've been hiding from it way too long, and that is definitely not helping things. But most importantly, I want you to know, if you're out there and you're going through what I went through, you are not alone. I'd like to end with a story. It's actually about Jared Loeffner. Another thing I noticed after the tragedy was that I saw on the news a reporter interviewing Jared's neighbors from high school. They said that in high school, Jared was actually a pretty vibrant young man who played the saxophone in the high school jazz band. They said that beautiful music would come from Jared's house every night. And then they said that one night, the music stopped. You see, Jared's not all that different from me. I play the flute, and in high school, beautiful music would come from my house every night too. The music stopped for me as well. But I'm back, and I'm here as a living testament to show that people can and do get better from mental illness. So if you're out there and you're going through what I went through, or you know someone who is, fight for them as they're fighting their way out of it. Because when you do, you're fighting for a guy like me. Thanks.